Right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Roundtable today, which is all around leveraging intuition to make smart decisions. Very happy to have Rebecca Heaslip with us today. She comes to us from Leadership Insight and is our featured presenter who will be taking us through this fabulous discussion. So no doubt this should be a very interesting presentation, and you will pick up a number of things over the next 45 minutes. And thank you again for all taking the time out on this Friday afternoon to be with us on the call. So
Good to be here.
Welcome, Rebecca. So we do have a sponsor for our webinar series, which is Get Abstract. Here's some information on the slide. And essentially, for those that don't know, Get Abstract is the world's largest library of business book summaries. They have over 8,000 titles online. Sorry, oh perfect, someone just muted, great. So their book summaries are set up in a format that can be quickly and easily read, and it allows you to stay current and competitive. And as part of being on the call today, you will receive a book summary courtesy of Get Abstract, which I'll send following this call. As well, I would encourage you to get in touch with Alice Smith. She's a really good friend of the Executive Roundtable, and she can talk to you both about their monthly subscription services as well as how you can access some great summaries. If you're one that necessarily doesn't like to read or just too busy to, pick up a book and get through it, this is a great way to get some current information in a hurry. So feel free to check out Get Abstract. So for those that might not know too much about the Executive Roundtable, we are a membership-based organization, over 400 strong, and our focus really lies on that mid-career leader that's fast-tracking through organizations. So essentially that next-gen executive, and that's where our focus lies as we try to bridge the experience gap between the next-gen executives and those that are currently in the C-suite. And we do this in a couple of leadership programs that is at the core of what we do. So we can help you, that mid-career leader, that next-gen executive at every stage of your career turn. Whether you're ramping up into a new role, perhaps you're in a role but just trying to push yourself to your next level of development, or maybe you're starting to get a little bit bored and hitting that career plateau and looking for that next step, well, we can help you refocus and ramp up again. And we have a couple of programs that will support you no matter what phase you're in. So our core program is our Roundtable for Leaders peer mentoring program. You'd meet with 8 individuals over a 10-month period really to talk about your leadership and have a deep dive into it. It's run by someone who's had a role in the C-suite as well as some coaching and mentoring experience. And we run this program both publicly and on-site for those who may be interested. Our public spring cohort is actually kicking off on April 17th, and we are hosting another information session. It's going to be a webinar, though, so you can just dial in from your desk on March 7th, and I'll share some more details at the end of the presentation. So in addition to the Roundtable for Leaders program, we have a couple of one-on-one programs. So maybe if the group isn't your thing or you have a specific need you'd like to tackle, well, we can help you through our leadership mentoring program. Or if you just want to kickstart, we can help you with your leadership, personal leadership plan as well. So again, if you like any information, we're always happy to chat or check out our website for more information. So today, our Roundtable is really just an opportunity to hear from different experts and consultants and leaders to hear their perspectives on the wide world of work. And we do like to invite different consultants and, again, just different speakers, so we get a different flavor every month. So in a minute, I'll review a few housekeeping items. I'll then pass it over to Rebecca to take us through the presentation, and we should have some closing comments and wrapped up by about 12:55. So how the format works, throughout the webinar, we do encourage discussion and questions. When you're speaking, just be sure to state your name so we know who's speaking. Share the air if you have a question. Let's just keep it focused as we have limited time. If there's a hot topic, feel free to throw it out. And like in Vegas, what's said on the line stays on the line. As well, you'll notice a discussion board on the right-hand side of your screen. So you can use this chat to throw in a comment or to ask questions, and I'll continue to monitor it throughout the presentation. As well, you'll see the raise your hand feature at the top of your screen. Rebecca will be asking a couple of questions throughout the presentation, so if you just want to click that little guy at the top, and that way we know you're either yes or no or whatever that is, depending on her question, or if you have a question throughout the presentation, feel free to use that feature as well, and we'll come back to you. And finally, for those, most of you know, but it's *6 to mute, #6 to unmute, and just know it takes about 1 to 2 seconds, so in case there's a delay. So as mentioned, following the presentation as well, we'll send you a copy of the PDF copy of the presentation, as well as Get Abstract summary. So before I hand it over to Rebecca, here's some information on the slide about Rebecca, and I want to thank her again for her time this afternoon. You can obviously read some of the things about her, but one of the things I just want to say is I'm really excited about her upcoming book. And when that does come out, hopefully late this year, we'll be sure to let you all know information so you can check it out. So over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Dina. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. I see we have a group of 22, so that's awesome. And thank you for all the questions you submitted upon registration. I'm hoping to address most of them during the presentation. If I haven't, raise your hand and at any time or at the end of the session, which we will leave time for questions. I'm hoping 5 or 10 minutes. So this is a real passion of mine, the subject of intuition, and I suspect it is for everybody else who is on the call today. It's a very interesting subject. I think we take our intuition for granted, and we're not leveraging it as much as we could. And I decided probably 4 years ago to write a book on intuition, and never really took it seriously, the thought, until this past year. And so I'm still in the research phase, and yes, it's going to be a while before I actually get the book published. I haven't decided yet if I'll try and self-publish, or I do have one publisher in the state that's the United States that's interested. So it's all very exciting, and I certainly will keep you posted. I have a website on intuition. It's my name, RebeccaHeaslip.com, and so there's a lot more there, and I'll be sharing some books that I've been reading. As you can imagine, over the last year, I've read a number of books on the subject of intuition in the brain, because there's a great connection between the brain and the heart and the soul, which is how some people define intuition. Just briefly, I've been in business for 15 years. I'm a leadership coach and consultant and trainer. I've developed a program called the Confident Coach to train managers how to have coaching conversations with staff. I do team building and a lot of assessment work. So I have observed people, as you can imagine, when I'm coaching, who seem to know what they should do, but they don't follow through. So in other words, their intuition tells them this is something that they should follow through on, and often they ignore it. So I've been very intrigued by that, and for part of my research, I'm interviewing leaders, successful leaders, to ask them, and celebrities in other fields, how they access their intuition and what it means to them to trust their gut, and how that actually resulted in so much success for them. So we'll get going, and like I said, don't be afraid to raise your hand. So the session outcomes, I think you may have seen this upon registration. We'll cover off the top reasons we ignore our intuition. I actually have a article that is on my website on that, so if you want even more information on that, please go to the website. How to enhance your intuitive abilities, definitely is something we can all do. Like any ability, there's, I would say, many levels of intuitive ability. So if you're not feeling like you're really accessing your intuition and leveraging as much as you should or could, don't worry. It's something that's there. It's always available to us. And then how to recognize these intuitive insights and clues. And I think that's one question that was a recurring sort of theme on the questions I had from participants. So I came up with some other questions, and I think some of you had these on your list. How do you know when you're acting from intuition? When is intuition most helpful? How do you balance intuition with information for decision making? And that's really critical, because in this session we're going to be talking about intuition broadly, but I know obviously a lot of people's questions were, how does this connect to the business world, and where things have to be rationalized and where things have to be measured, and you have to cross your T's, dot your I's, and then you have to have a good ROI, and it has to be proven. So intuition is one of those things that's unproven, and it's kind of faith-based, if you like. So how does that work in the business world? Can anyone tap into their intuition, or is it an ability that only a few possess? And can intuition be developed, and really how do we do that? So what is intuition? I mean, that's a pretty sort of fully loaded question, because I think it's very specific to people. We sometimes call it sixth sense. We sometimes call it a hunch or a nudge, a sense of knowing. And really, the words intuition and instinct are often used interchangeably. And I think I'd like to make that distinction first off. There's instinct, which we all have in our DNA. This is passed on to us from generations, and as well the survival instinct and safety instinct is pretty much ingrained in our DNA. So it comes out sometimes if our personal safety is threatened. That whole fight or flight reflex is automatic. We don't have to think about it. It's an involuntary reaction. That's purely instinct. So in our species, if you like, we have instinct just like other species do. Then there's what we would call gut instinct. Now, gut instinct is usually used interchangeably with intuition, and the way I see the distinction is that gut instinct is referring again to the ability to draw on sort of past experience, knowledge, the wisdom that's stored not necessarily in your gut, but we use that term broadly, and it's really within our bodies, the ability to recognize patterns. And this happens in an instant, and our brains pick up those messages, and they make the connection in our subconscious, and they send back the feeling, which is usually how intuition is expressed. It can be a thought, it can be a vision, it can be a feeling, but often people describe it as a feeling. And we often make a snap judgment based on that feeling. Now, I think, that's the definition that most people would relate to, is that the same concept that Malcolm Gladwell in his book Blink, if you've read that, it's an excellent book. He refers to that. It's knowing and not having all the facts. It's knowing without having to think about it. So intuition, though, I think can be more conscious as well, if that sounds like a contradiction, because it's access from the subconscious, but we can deliberately, let's put it that way, we can access it in a very deliberate, conscious way. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that, and that's how you leverage your intuition, is when we get quiet and we get in touch with our soul, we get insight into things that maybe have been sitting there simmering in the subconscious, and we're too busy to actually notice, and we can get immediate answers, and even answers that we can reflect on, insights and answers we can reflect on that make our decision-making richer. So there's sort of two levels. There's that deliberate, which I call, and I've trademarked the term, intentional intuition, and then there's that involuntary gut instinct and gut reaction. So, I often ask the question, are children intuitive? If you go by the standard definition that intuition is really a reflection of, stored wisdom and knowledge in our unconscious, their experiences are limited. So we have to protect children because they may be reacting just from their amygdala part of the brain, which is driven by the fight or flight, and an emotional part of the brain. And that's not, emotion and intuition are not the same thing. So they could be making rash decisions that aren't good for them, and that's because they don't have that experience. So instinct is helpful in situations when we don't have much time to think, like emergencies, um, and or times when we really don't think about it, like everyday decisions. We just do things, whether it's, you want to call it rote or routine decisions, just automatically. An example I've used in the past, I think, when Captain Sully, as you recall, landed his plane in the Hudson River, when the two engines cut out, he was drawing on years of experience and training, but when he was interviewed, he was asked, what were you thinking at the time? He says, I didn't think. He said, my decision was made in a split second. I have to do this. And then he had, then my years of training, after I made that split second decision based on intuition, then my years of training about what do I do first, what do I do second, comes into play. So there was no time for deliberation. He just had to make that decision. So how do you know when you're acting from intuition? Well, there's so much research now that's pointing to the fact that when we're acting from intuition, we're acting from all places in the body, the heart, the brain, the gut. And by the way, they're all connected neurologically. So we may actually have a thought that originates in the brain, but it has to be validated, if you like, in some ways by the heart and the gut for it to be a very good decision for us. So before we actually make a decision, this is all, again, happening in a split second. Our unconscious finds those patterns in situations and behaviors based on that split second observation. The limbic center of the brain, the emotional center, activates that circuitry that runs into the gut and provides that gut feeling, and it's palpable. For some people, it's a visceral feeling. They can say, I have a gut ache, and my gut doesn't feel right about it, and they really do have an unsettled stomach. Now, other people would say, I just don't have something that dramatic, but I do have this generalized feeling of either being very light, if it's a good decision and something positive, or a heaviness, a sense of dread almost. So sometimes, our gut screams out to us to pay attention, and we're too busy to notice the subtle changes in our body sensations. And really, that's how you're acting from intuition, is when something feels completely right in your head, heart, and gut. And similarly, if it's something that is not right, your head, heart, and your gut are all aligned, and they're all firing at the same time saying, this is something to step away from. So everyone experiences intuition in the body differently. So some people get sweaty palms. Some people, the hair on their neck stands up. For myself, just speaking from experience, when something's really not positive, if I really think that there's a threat to my safety or that there's something I need to be worried and concerned about, I actually get quite a sharp pain in the side of my neck. And this has proven to be, to help actually keep my children safe. I've actually kept myself safe a couple of times by getting off a highway and averting an accident. My middle son was going to go to a tournament, hockey tournament in Ottawa. This is many years ago when my husband was coaching. And for some reason, I put my foot down. He had been in a number of tournaments. And I just said, no, I really believe something is going to happen, and I can't put my finger on it. And that's the important thing about intuition, is to trust it without really having to analyze it to death. So I really put my foot down and said, no, I don't want him going. And within an hour of the bus leaving Toronto, the bus flipped on black ice, and a number of parents and kids were injured. So it's just I had that sense a sense of dread. I couldn't explain it. I had a pain in my neck, and so I tell people to, if you're not sure where the emotion lies in your body, every time you make a decision in the next week that's a positive one and it's good, take note of how you feel, where you feel it in the body, and journal it. Similarly, if there's a very unpleasant situation that occurs in the next week, record in a journal how you're feeling, where in the body you're feeling, what's the sensation. Is it butterflies? Is it quickened heart rate? Is it tension in your shoulders? What is it? So I think we just need to pay attention. And that's how you know when you're acting from intuition, because everything's all aligned. Everything feels either really right or it's feeling really wrong. So the reasons we ignore our intuitive wisdom are, I think, these would be probably the top 5 reasons. And there's many more, but I would say just generalize, stress from everyday life. We're busy. We are multitasking. When you're multitasking, you're not terribly focused on one thing, which I think we need to get back to trying to stay present and focused, and that's when you're more aware, and I almost equate a heightened level of intuition with a heightened level of self-awareness. So if you would describe yourself as an intuitive being, you would probably have to use the word, I'm very self-aware. So that gets compromised with the stresses of life. We're not eating properly a lot of the times. We're cutting, maybe getting fast food or cutting meals, cutting corners. We're maybe not exercising enough. I know that a lot of people are sleep deprived. They are not getting the recommended 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night. You'll have to make that up some other time. And even making it up on the weekends, they say, isn't the same. So trying to get regular sleep. If you can take a nap on the train, if you're taking the train in the mornings, anything you can do to get that peaceful, calm, relaxed state. We also have a fear of making mistakes, and this can be partly your temperament. So if you're used to the Myers-Briggs or DISC model, the introverted styles in DISC are the steady and compliant styles. The compliant style especially, which is typical of people in IT, accounting, and finance, they are afraid of making mistakes. So they are usually in positions where it's very rational, fact-based, and that's what their tendency is to question and analyze everything. So they are going to do that naturally anyway, even when it comes to their own decision-making, instead of just trusting that inner soul, that inner wisdom. They're going to actually have to somehow measure it, because in their mind, if you can't, manage it, you can't measure it. So they have to be able to manage it and get some kind of evidence. We're overwhelmed with information. I don't know if you would agree with that, but I think technology has certainly enabled so many things. I also think that it's caused us a lot of stress. We have more emails than we can imagine in a day. We have access readily 24/7 to information on the internet. And even if you think about kids when they're texting their friends to get opinions on things, it's like everybody else is an expert but ourselves. So I think that's unfortunate, is that people are now deferring to others. And when you research too much, we know, the expression less is more certainly can apply here. It's not always the best approach. Yes, there are instances when you need to get second opinions, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there are times when you really don't need to, and you get into that analysis paralysis stage. And then there's the inner critic, which I think is a really interesting one, because the inner critic says, no, you shouldn't do that, as soon as you come up with an idea that's maybe just came out of what you think came out of nowhere. Sometimes I call that intuition. It seems to come out of nowhere. But the inner critic, we're conditioned from a very early age. It's the way we're schooled a lot of the time. Is we can come up with great ideas, but in children especially, they're often educators in the past have been guilty of saying, no, we don't do it that way. This is the way we do it. I remember I used to do my multiplication tables very differently, and I remember getting, even though I got the right answer, I would lose marks because I didn't do my multiplication tables the way. And I couldn't do it any other way, and I still can't. So I think there was a bit of conditioning there. we defer to the wisdom of other people because we do honor experts. We do believe that people have, if they're in a more senior position or have more experience or whatever, that they must know something we don't know. Yes, in fact, they do. They have the experience, and you can gain that too. The more that you use your intuition, the more experienced you'll become and confident you'll become in using it. So people like Richard Branson, he says he would never have gone into half of the businesses that he's in now, if he had listened entirely to his accountants, for instance. There has to be a balanced approach. He often ignored advice from other people and simply went ahead because he had a very strong gut feeling that this something would work. And he gave the example of opening a Virgin Mobile record store on a particular street, and of course, the experts brought out all the stats to show that there was terrible traffic area, wouldn't get the traffic, and he stood firm, and it was one of the highest grossing stores. So I think you need to address these reasons, and if you don't, they will come back to haunt you if you're continually ignoring your inner wisdom that is, for the most part, it's right. Before we go into the slide, maybe I should go back and just say, if people would like to vote, if you think there are times when we actually should ignore our intuition, raise your hand. If you think there are situations or times when you should absolutely ignore your intuition. I don't know if we have any hands.
So to raise your hand is just at the top there, guys?
Right at the very top of the bar, above the slides, the little man with the hand raised.
So I see a couple of hands going up.
Yeah. So, I mean, frankly, I'm not sure that you should ignore your intuition. I think the question really is your intuition always right? And I would say the intuition is always right, except it's not everything. So you need to have a balance in terms of intuition. When you're buying a house or making any major investment, major decisions in your life, you have other things to consider, financial things, and these have to come into play. You can't just say, well, I like that house. I know it's $500,000 more than my budget, but I think it would be a great place to live based on my intuition. Yes, it probably would be an awesome place to live, but financially you can't afford it. So I think that's more the question is your intuition always right? It's not the full picture. And I think we have to keep that in mind. So when is intuition most helpful? Well, it's particularly helpful when you're encountering a new person or situation for the first time. In other words, you don't have that luxury of prior experience or knowledge, or you haven't met this person before. It could be in an interview. It could be in a social setting. We know that within the first 10 seconds of meeting someone, we create an impression. And that's based on intuition because we haven't met them before. But the intuition aspect, the stored knowledge we have in our brains of other people that look like them, feel like them, we do draw on that in a split second. So even though we haven't met them, we may have met someone who looks like them, sounds like them, and generally it feels like they're the same kind of person, and we make that snap judgment. And that's why you always like to interview people a few times or do assessments on new hires, because sometimes you could be a little bit fooled by that. But I always say to people, balance that out as well. When you're hiring, don't say, well, my gut says this person is not a good person. You're maybe not seeing the whole person. So that's when your gut might let you down, because your gut is reacting to their tone of voice. And you think, oh, reminds me of a person that had that similar tone of voice, and I didn't have a good connection with them. So you have to see the bigger picture. Intuition is helpful when you confront a complex situation. So yes, you're going to have, say, multiple options in a very complex problem-solving situation. At the end of the day, though, you have to make a decision, and often you will start with an idea or thought that might be generated from, like me, might be an intuitive kind of decision. You do the research and you come up with all the different kinds of options. And then at the end of the day, you'll probably revert to your intuition again to say which of these wonderful options, because there will probably be many, actually feel the best. And that's what intuition is like. Which one actually feels the best? So it's in complex situations where there's multiple options, I'd say that's particularly helpful. As we discussed earlier, when you need to make a decision under extreme stress, such as when there was the plane landing in the Hudson, or under tight timelines, or when you have no opportunity to get additional data. So those kinds of stressful situations, using your intuition becomes imperative, actually. Or when you need to clarify underlying tension or dissonance. And this is something where I think when I'm talking about that heightened level of self-awareness that certain people have, this is particularly when you can say, you know what, my heart feels something, but my head, the expression, you've used it yourself, I'm sure, my heart's feeling this, but my head isn't, or my head is telling me this, but my heart's saying something else. That dissonance you should pay attention to. Or you got that woozy feeling in your stomach, but you have no clarity in your head about it. That kind of dissonance. So you need to say, okay, what is going on here? And that's when you do take time out. I'm not saying you necessarily analyze, but I'm saying you maybe take some time away from the situation. You might need to have a different physical place to go to, and where you do get some greater clarity. It may be that there's a certain place in your home or in your office where you might have to step out and get near nature and get some fresh air and get perspective. So pay attention to that. The opportunity for new insights and opportunities, ideas, that's when intuition really helps. It's like when you're doing creative brainstorming. Where do those ideas come from? Well, they're often coming from you, within you. You don't have necessary prior experience with them, but these kind of out of the blue insights are intuitive insights. And also, like we said, when you perceive a threat to your personal safety, when you're walking down the street and there's somebody coming towards you and you get a very weird feeling, cross the street and go to the other side. You don't have to understand why. You don't have to say, oh, I'm paranoid. You may never know if that person was going to be posing a threat to your safety, but I think that's when you err on the side of caution. So intuition versus rationality or facts, or is it intuition and rationality and facts? I say it's both. It's not either or. As we know, some intuition is actually grounded in your prior knowledge and wisdom. But I feel there's a lot of rationale to intuition. It's your rationale. So, when you have no prior experience, your sixth sense does alert you to new possibilities that should be investigated and researched. Our intuition informs us of the options that are worthy of detailed analysis. So there are times when our innate wisdom is really not enough. It provides that emotional counterweight to rationality and facts, and then analysis provides the logical counterweight to intuition. So we need both. I think that, like I mentioned earlier, we live in an age when more data and information is always thought to be better, but I don't necessarily think it is. I think there's got to be a balance. I think there are times when too much data can actually thwart our intuitive sense and our creativity. And I suspect a lot of people would feel that they're overwhelmed with all the options that are available to them, and they get totally confused. So I think it's about finding the balance. As I mentioned, I'm reading a number of good books. There is a bibliography at the end of this, short one, at the end of this webinar. The one book I've just finished reading is Super Brain, and it's one of, I think, 80 books I think Deepak Chopra has written, who's so prolific. Rudolf Tanzi is the head of neuroscience at Harvard university, and he's studying particularly Alzheimer's disease because I believe his mom is suffering from that. But Superbrain is an awesome book. It talks, there's a whole chapter on intuition. And then they say if you're too trusting of your intuitive hunches, you fail to see reason when it counts. And if you ignore your intuition, you lose that ability to feel out situations. So both are important, and it's our responsibility to become really self-aware and attuned to our feelings to help understand why we feel a certain way. And that might mean we need to take a moment to understand what that connection is to the heart. We need to find the relevance in facts and data in certain situations, and at other times we need to be able to intuit when we need to research more and when we need to step back and just say, I think I have enough information. This is all I need to know. Like with my son, I couldn't possibly foresee or foreshadow that the bus was going to go off the road, but I certainly knew I didn't want him going. So you need to develop that intuitive sense, and you can do that over time. And so this practice, this 5-step process that I have developed called intentional intuition, is something that you can do every day. I'm sure many of you do yoga, meditation, some deep breathing, deep relaxation techniques to calm your busy self at the end of the day, or maybe you start off your day with that. But I do believe everyone can tap into their intuition, and I do believe we can enhance that ability, which is really developing that sense of knowing without really knowing why. And I think we need to find time in our day to get quiet and alone. I think that's the number one thing. It's in all the literature I'm reading. The people who describe themselves as very intuitive do this every single day. And this can take 20 minutes, could take 30, it could take 5 minutes after you get really good at it. But you need to find that quiet place where you can get centered, where you can get in touch with your inner wisdom, and you can block out everything around you. The second stage is deep relaxation, whether it's deep breathing. I do therapeutic touch. Qigong is good. Music, meditation. A guided meditation is always helpful if you're not familiar with meditation. There's so many great guided meditation tapes on YouTube that you can download free. So, or videos and with music, and they're just awesome, and they're as short as 10 minutes to half hour guided meditations. And then when you're quiet and in a deep relaxed state, you don't have to get as deep as some people do when they're meditating. I just like a quiet focus state is what I would call it. And then you can be open to receiving the messages. And at this stage, stage 3, I always offer gratitude, such as thank you for my imparting wisdom on me, and thank you for my internal wisdom. Thank you for allowing me to see what I need to see. And you can turn it into a question, but if you're analytical, I would not turn it into a question too quickly, such as what is it that I need to learn today? Because as soon as you do that, you're going to perhaps put on, the logical left brain side on fire, and you're going to start developing that cost-benefit analysis of every decision you make. So you can move into a question mode when you feel comfortable, and it could be simply as what is my key learning, or it can be a statement, I'm open to learning what I need to learn today. And then you wait, and you just let the thoughts percolate from your subconscious, because I say we all have unfinished business, and our subconscious is trying to figure it out and trying to bring it to a conscious level. And you'll know once you've gone through this, you'll have these insights come, whether it's I need to phone this person, or I need to make sure that my son is safe on this field trip, or whatever it is. It will percolate once you're in that deep relaxed state and you're open to receiving the messages. Now, when you get these insights, don't try and analyze them. Don't try, and you might ask another question, or even just say, tell me more, or isn't that interesting? I've been feeling that. And then wait and journal the insights and thoughts that you get and the feelings that you get. It may be when that insight percolates to the surface that you actually it's an associated feeling in your body of either excitement, dread, or anticipation. Journal it. At the time, you might, at that moment, take action on one of those insights. It might be that clear. It was something like that came to me for the colors of my website. I just wasn't clear on what colors I wanted to use and what theme I wanted to use, and I got into a session, and it came within seconds. So, and I'd been struggling sitting at my computer, and nothing would come. So, removing yourself from the place where you typically learn and work, I think, is really important as well, to an area that's calm and peaceful. And so you can take action, and intuition is not helpful if you just get into a deep meditative state, have all these wonderful ideas, but then you don't take the action. So in other words, you either ignore your intuition, or you just go down a different path. So take action on the insight you got in that 20 minutes, and don't look back, because many of us will make the decision and then we'll feel unsettled, and we'll say, maybe it wasn't the right one. Maybe I should have done something different. So I would suggest for a week, journal your body and sensations as a result of good news or bad news. Then the next thing you can do is practice sticking with the decision for a week. So every decision you make, promise yourself that you're going to stick with it. You're not going to second guess and go back and see if, analyze it again to see if it was a good decision. And that will help you to build your intuitive sense and confidence in your ability to make good decisions. So finding a quiet place where you really can feel connected to your soul is important. Finding some kind of deep relaxation exercise is important. And then following through with the rest of the 5-step process and doing it every day for at least a month, because we know it takes 30 days, at least a minimum of 21, but I'd say 30 minimum myself, to create a new habit. You can do this spontaneously, or you can do it at the same time every day. You can do it when you're struggling with this unfinished business and like my website, and you need to get clarity. So you can even do it a couple times during the day. So other tips in terms of what to do to build your intuitive sense, I'd say put yourself in situations that force you to act without any prior idea of what you'll do once you're there. So it's about taking risk and having faith. So put yourself in situations where you have no prior knowledge or experience. Go with your first thought. We always talk about that, and we reflect back and we go, you know what, that first thought I had actually was the right one. Stay healthy. It's really important. Stress, alcohol, coffee, any other drugs, they all inhibit our ability actually to connect with our intuition because it's compromising the synapse. So stay positive. That will enable those insights to percolate to the surface. And practice with smaller decisions that aren't, life-changing decisions, and move up to the bigger ones as your confidence in your being successful with your intuitive decisions increases. So start small and build. I think that's really important, because unless you're already at a stage where you feel you're very strongly intuitive, and go for it. But if you're not feeling it, I would say start small. So there's lots of great quotes on the internet. I found this one: intuition will tell the thinking mind where to look next. That's a good way of bridging intuition and information, and intuition and cognition. So intuition will tell the thinking mind, this is where you need to look next. It doesn't matter the order, I don't think, as long as when you're making decisions, you're checking in with your gut and saying, is this aligned with how I'm feeling? On paper it looks good, but does it feel right as well? So it costs nothing to get in touch with your intuition. It's one of those wonderful self-help tools that everyone has. It costs nothing. It doesn't take very much time. It's always right in the sense that there's an element of intuition that intuition should be part of every decision you make. When you do it and you do it regularly, you sleep better at night and you can live your life without regrets, I think. So here's the summary, and then I can take some questions. Always trust your spontaneous observations and insights. Um, it is your gut talking to you. It's not that they're coming out of nowhere. They're coming out of you. So for that reason, you need to really pay closer attention to the clues that your body gives you and patterns and synchronicities. When I make a decision about something, within a day, I will see that decision reaffirmed throughout the day. And it's not that I'm looking for it. I totally believe that there are, some people call them coincidences, but the synchronicity of seeing a pattern of that same thought occurring during the day, whether it's on a billboard or it's in a conversation with somebody, it's quite uncanny what happens. Go with your first thought and stop second guessing, and then practice this intentional intuition daily to enhance your intuitive abilities. So it's really about believing in the power of you. And I use the photo here of the hummingbird because the hummingbird is a remarkable species. Do you know that they fly with a wing speed of up to 80 beats a second? They have a heart rate of 1,260 beats a second. They appear to operate by pure instinct. They fly sometimes, I think it's hundreds of kilometers without stopping. They believe. They don't second guess. They just know. And I think they're kind of a marvel of nature. So I would just say if you want to become more intuitive and you're not sure at what stage you are, I have a quiz also on my website that you can rate your intuitive abilities. And if you practice all the things that I'm suggesting, it will happen pretty quickly. That's the beauty of intuition. You will see results fairly quickly. So that's self-reinforcing as well. So I have another slide with the books. Superbrain's a good one, and Brain, which is using your multiple brains, your heart, your head, your gut. Blink, as I mentioned, and also Trust Your Gut, How the Power of Intuition Can Grow Your Business. They're all great books. And there's my contact information. So that's the end of the presentation, but I am definitely here to answer any questions. If I didn't address some of the questions that you posed at the beginning when you registered, please let me know. I think there was a question. Is there a question?
Well, no, it's just Dina here, but yeah, folks, I see someone typing in, but feel free, like, do some of these things resonate with you? Is there something that you'd still like Rebecca to clarify? Like, feel free to just hit unmute right now, and here's your opportunity to ask the question. Maybe in the meantime, I'll start us off. This was asked upon registration, but can you maybe give some tips in the business setting? I know a lot of the folks on the call today are sort of mid-level managers or sit on teams, and what would be some tips you could offer them when maybe they're going with their gut and they're feeling something so strongly, but they might not be able to have the facts to prove it or the ROI? And so what would be some tips on how they can approach that situation with others that they might have to also convince that, listen, like, I have this feeling, I have this gut instinct. How can they kind of work with that in that environment?
Well, we do workplaces are a lot of evidence-based decision-making takes place, and you do have to show a return on investment and whatever, even if you're not for profit, you have to demonstrate good use of resources. So when you have a strong intuitive sense, I think the wording's very important. Even trusting your gut seems to be more accepted in the business world than the word intuition. But I think if you describe it as, I have this strong feeling about this, and can we just talk about it? Because sometimes when you talk through things with people and get other perspectives, that feeling that you have, it may have been more fear-based than intuitive-based. So I think that's important. I think collaboration is a great way to access everyone's intuition, everyone's gut feel. So in a workplace, when you have two people, you may have two people saying, "Well, I have a different gut feel for that." So there may be that particular
Mm,
complication as well. So I think more discussion. I don't necessarily mean it's more research, but more discussion and honoring people the same way that we honor people's different behavioral temperaments. You know, I do workshops on that, on how to accommodate different behavioral styles. Well, it's the same thing. You're accommodating different feelings and thoughts, and we know when you're creative brainstorming, think of it that way. People are not, they don't have evidence that any of these things will work, but they have a feeling and a thought that why shouldn't we, take a risk and try some of these things.
great. No, I definitely think you hit some great points on, just taking away maybe what we're thinking about the terms and just being a little bit more collaborative.
Mhm.
So again, if there's any other questions, I know some people have to head off, but if there's any other questions, feel free right now to get in and either type your question in or unmute and jump right on in.
There was a question on the registration. How can you use intuition to understand when someone's playing mind games versus being genuine? And again, your body knows. Your body is telling you, and you just have to be really self-aware. And that's the bottom line for intuition, is understanding that feeling that you have and being able to recognize it. And
Right.
so when it's not feeling right for you, then you will know that there's a potential that to be careful with that particular person. So you do need to trust it.
Absolutely. So thanks so much. Maybe what I'll do is I know a lot of people have to head out to a few more meetings, but
Mhm.
again, we will be sending a copy of this entire deck, and all of Rebecca's information is on here. So maybe not today, but maybe over the weekend, or if there's any other follow-up or any questions you may have, you can feel free to follow up directly with Rebecca, and I'm sure she's happy to talk further and, answer any questions that folks might have.
Mhm.
So again, thank you so much, Rebecca. Honestly, I know sometimes people look at intuition and think it's that fluffy cloud or something, but
Mhm.
I think this day and age there's so much more research and actually evidence that shows that people that are more in tune are actually more wholehearted, more aware, and just all the positives that come out of it. And so I
Yeah.
really hope that folks today take one or two things and, apply it to their daily lives. Meditation doesn't have to be an hour long
No.
or not what people think, but, just getting silence and getting one with with yourself. I'll also send a TED Talk that it made me think of during your presentation that I think is really great for a lot of business leaders. So I'll also send this to the group. So finally, just want to mention a couple things. At the Executive Roundtable, we're always looking out for great people to join our community. As mentioned, we are membership-based. So if any of you have a colleague who is at level leadership role with at least 4 years of progressive leadership experience, let us know, or they can visit our website and click the Get Involved tab to sign up for our free membership. If there is anyone on the call today that's not a member but does fall in this category, then again, sign up for membership, and then roundtables are at no charge to you as part of being a member. As well, if you're not already connected with us on social media, please do so. We continue to push out interesting articles, resources, letting you know about upcoming events. So let's connect if we aren't. Again, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then finally, just worth mentioning is we have a couple of upcoming events. If you go to our forums page, you'll see events from now until June, different topics. But worth mentioning is our Roundtable for Leaders information session. I know a lot of folks can't make it face-to-face, but we have a webinar, again, so you could just join in, just dial in. It's March 7th, 11 to 12. Glyne Roberts, the president of Executive Roundtable, will be hosting it, and she'll be sharing some more information about this program. There'll be some past participants on the call as well, so you can hear from them about what they got out of the program and their experiences. And the last thing I want to mention before I end is just about our Power Roundtable event as well that's taking place on April 10th. 7:30 to 10 a.m. It's downtown Toronto at the Verity Club for those. All the information is on our website, but limited seating, and this is really an opportunity to hear from 3 senior leaders. We're happy to have Stacey Allerton, Dave Barron, and Sharon Wood as our featured panelists, so you can hear face-to-face and sort of their experiences on how they were able to and are able to effectively influence the executive level. And I know a lot of you are in that middle level role, always looking for ways to influence that level or the people that you report into. So this is going to be a fantastic session, and I would, again, recommend you signing up as soon as possible, as there are limited seats for this session. So again, thanks everybody. Many thanks to Rebecca. Look up follow-up email, and have a great weekend. I think we are just 1 minute to 1. So
Great.
if there's anything, let us know, and thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Dina, so much. I really enjoyed it.
No problem. All right, thanks everybody.